Some truths don't arrive with a loud bang. They slip quietly into our lives like the morning mist outside the window. You don't hear them coming. You don't quite see them. By the time you notice, you're already sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at a phone that hasn't rung all day, looking at a blank calendar with no appointments left, and wondering to yourself, when did the world move on without saying goodbye? No one ever warned us that living long isn't just about more birthdays or more stories to tell. Living long means outliving many you once laughed with. It means sitting through more funerals than you ever imagined. It means feeling less needed a little more each day. You've probably heard people talk about aging, the aching joints, the long list of prescriptions, the fuzzy memory. But this is a different kind of pain. Not of the body, but of the spirit. A truth few ever dare to name. The real price of living past 80 isn't illness. It's fading from the world. It's part of the picture of real life after 80, the part no one prepared you for. And that's precisely why understanding healthy aging, not just through medicine, but through emotions, connection, and presence, is more critical now than ever. And yet you're still here, still breathing, still thinking, still remembering, still hoping. Even if the world has grown quieter, even if the spotlight has shifted away from you, there's still a light inside you that's never gone out. And maybe, just maybe, it's because of that light that you're here now, that you clicked on this video, because a part of you just softly whispered, I know this feeling. The feeling of long, stretching silence. The feeling of not being someone people wait for anymore. The feeling of no one asking, how are you doing today? And that feeling, it doesn't scream. It simply passes by, meal after quiet meal, each time you sit without a reason to get up. That feeling, no one ever taught you how to face it. But today, you won't have to face it alone. Today, we're going to name 5 brutal realities, 5 truths that old age brings, quietly but powerfully. Not to scare you, not to sadden you, but to help you truly understand what you're going through. Because once you see it, truly see it, it no longer controls you. You begin to take back your path. When we name pain, it loses its power. When we share the pain, it loses its shame. And when we dare to face the truth, we stop feeling invisible. So if you've ever sat by the window and felt like the world no longer needs you, if you've ever wondered why your body doesn't obey like it used to, if you've ever carried quiet sorrows no one talks about, then please, stay. You are not wrong. You are not weak. You are simply walking a road few speak of. And I want you to meet someone. Someone who's walked with hundreds of older adults through each step of life after 80. His name is Calvin Hayes, 77 years old, a geriatric physician, and more than that, a listener. He doesn't just prescribe pills. He sits at hospital bedsides when someone's spouse has just passed. He doesn't just read scans. He listens to the whispered questions in the night, like when an older woman asks, "Do I still matter anymore?" Today, he'll walk with us on a quiet journey through 5 honest chapters of real life after 80. Truths we think everyone knows, but few dare to say out loud. Truths that may tighten your chest, that may blur your eyes, just like they've blurred mine. But truths that once known become keys. Keys to living on, with more peace and far less confusion. You'll meet Walter, who used to chat with friends every morning, but now sits alone with a cup of cold coffee. You'll meet Gloria, who used to walk the block easily, but now hesitates to go out, all because of one slight fall. You'll meet Eugene, who hides his falls so his daughter won't worry. You'll meet Irene, once a respected history expert, now passed over by young visitors at a museum. And you'll meet Stanley, a retired teacher, once admired by hundreds of students, now sitting quietly at home, wondering, who still needs me now? These people, they aren't strangers. They are us. They are me. They are you. They are that neighbor you saw once on the balcony every morning, with no one ever calling their name. Each story is a truth, not meant to be escaped, but embraced, just like old age itself. With eyes that have seen so much, with hands that now tremble, but still know how to hold love, and with a heart still moved when someone says, "I understand you." If you're ready, then we'll begin. And if there's a moment in this video that truly touches you, please comment with the number of the part you relate to most. It's not just a way to let us know you're here. It helps others feel less alone too. And most of all, it helps you reclaim your voice in a world that sometimes forgets you're still here. And it's still deeply worth hearing. Issue 1, The Shrinking Circle of Loneliness. It was a morning like any other. Walter stepped into the little cafe on the corner, the same one he'd been going to for the past 18 years. Same table by the window, same old brown leather chair. Sunlight slid gently across the wooden floor. The smell of toast hung softly in the air. But today, something felt quieter than usual. No one waved. No one looked up from the newspaper and called out that familiar name, Walt. No laughter echoed from the table by the wall. It was just him, a cup of coffee, and soft jazz playing from the speaker. There was a time when his table always had at least 3 others. Frank, the worst joke teller, but the loudest laugher. Leo, who never went anywhere without his crossword pen. And Linda, the only woman in the group, who used to tease Walter as the grumpiest man in town. Now, Frank passed away 3 years ago. Leo moved in with his daughter, who was out of state. And Linda? No one's sure. Just a whisper that she might have entered a nursing home last winter. No message, no goodbyes. They disappeared, like morning fog melting into the air. Walter took a quiet sip of his coffee. Everything around him stayed the same. But he was no longer the same. When you're younger, friendships don't require planning. They happen at work, at church, on the sidelines during school drop-off. Connections were built through everyday moments, borrowing salt, fixing a leaky pipe, walking the dog together. And we assumed it would always be that way. But after 80, a quiet truth settles in. You begin to outlive your friends. It's not the sharp grief of losing a loved one. It's slower, a soft, steady falling away, little by little, year after year. One day your phone rings less. Another day, someone doesn't show up to the usual monthly lunch. And eventually, you realize that the number of people who genuinely know you has grown painfully small. No more texts saying, "Coffee." No more calls to share some silly news. No more reminders to bring a jacket when it gets chilly. And strangely, without those little things, you start to feel like you're not living anymore. Walter recalled the day a new barista asked him, "Do you usually sit here alone, sir?" It's an innocent question, but it made his chest tighten. 'Cause no, he didn't used to. He used to be part of something warm, something full of laughter. Now, he still sat in the same place, but the ones who brought the joy were no longer there. You can be healthy. You can walk on your own, cook your meals, even drive. But if there's no one left to call your name, no one who lights up and says, "Hey, it's you," and when you walk in, you're still lonely. A quiet kind of loneliness. Not dramatic, not painful. Just a space in the chest that never quite fills. And here's what many won't say out loud. The longer you live, the easier it is to get swallowed by silence. Not because anyone means harm, just because life moves on. People get busy. People drift away. People grow old in their ways. Turning 80 is not the time to wait for someone to remember you. It's the time to open your door, reach out, and reclaim your voice. Because connection in old age doesn't come effortlessly anymore. It needs to be planted and nurtured. It requires courage to send the first message, to walk into a new room and say again, "Hi, My name is Walter. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Because if you don't, the silence grows. And one day you'll realize you're still alive, but no longer present in anyone's life. Walter eventually chose to change that. He joined a book club at the local library. At first, he just listened quietly. Then, one day, he shared about an old novel he loved. A young woman turned to him and smiled. My grandpa used to read that with me. I think I'll reread it now. Just one sentence, and something inside Walter lit up again. Because at that moment he was seen. He was heard. He was called, "Sir, you are never too old to reconnect." You need the courage to get past that first bit of hesitation. Because at this age, people won't come to you like they used to. You are the one who must step forward first. And if something in this story felt true for you, if you've ever sat quietly in a once familiar cafe or stared at your contact list, unsure who to call, then leave a number 1 in the comments. Because maybe someone else just typed 1 too. And just like you, they are waiting for someone to say, coffee. Number 2, the body doesn't bounce back like before. Gloria was never afraid of roses. She loved them. A quiet, enduring kind of love that lasted decades. Every morning, without fail, she would slip on her worn garden gloves, mist the sleeping buds with a gentle spray, then snip away the wilted leaves and tired stems. She called her garden my quiet little children because they didn't talk back. They just needed you to be present long enough, and they would bloom, live, and shine. But one March morning, as she bent down to pick up a stem broken by the wind, Gloria slipped. The soil was soft. Her heel was worn thin. She had the pruning shears in hand, so she couldn't catch herself. It wasn't a hard fall, just a drop to her knees. No broken bones, no blood, just... From that day on, she stopped going out to the garden. At first, it was just a swollen knee, then a dull ache in her thigh. Her walking grew stiff. Her sleep was restless. Each turn in bed brought a twinge of pain. Her daughter said, "Just rest for a few days, Mom." Gloria nodded, but a few days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The shears stayed in their wooden box. The gloves hung untouched behind the door. And Gloria no longer stepped into the garden, a place that had once been the soul of her every day. Maybe what scared her most wasn't the fall itself, but the feeling that she couldn't bounce back as she used to. When we're young, we fall and we get up. You catch a cold, drink some tea, sleep it off, and bounce back by morning. You twist an ankle and take 2 days off good as new. You get used to the idea that rest means recovery, that healing is natural, almost automatic. But after 80, your body speaks a new language. It doesn't shout, it whispers, but unmistakably, I need more time now. I don't heal like before. And sometimes, it doesn't say anything. It just doesn't go back to how it was. Gloria shared that after 3 weeks of resting, she stood up, and her legs felt weaker. She was out of breath after just a few stairs. She had to hold onto the cart the whole time at the grocery store with her daughter. And the hardest moment of all, she needed help washing her hair because her left arm trembled uncontrollably when she tried to lift it. She couldn't name the exact day her strength disappeared. It just faded. One day, it was gone. It wasn't a dramatic grief, just a quiet kind of sadness. The absence of a strength that used to feel as natural as breathing. That's what life after 80 can be. You can eat right. You can move every day. But even with all your care, your body can still surprise you. A sudden dizzy spell. A stiff back after a night's sleep. A cough that lasts longer than you expect. And suddenly, your whole week must bend around your fatigue. Gloria once asked her doctor, "Did I do something wrong?" He just smiled gently. "No, Gloria, you didn't do anything wrong. Your body is just rewriting the rules. And now, It's time to learn how to live by this new rulebook. In other words, don't wait for your body to bounce back. Learn how to walk with it, with patience, with gentleness, and with gratitude, because it has carried you this far. After the fall, Gloria made a small calendar and stuck it to the fridge. Every morning, she did 10 minutes of gentle stretches. Every afternoon, a walk around the house no more than 15 minutes. Some days she felt tired, so she stopped early. No blame, no pressure. It's just a small act of motion every day. A quiet word to her legs. We're still walking together. To her hands, we can still do so many things. And somehow, after 3 months, Gloria returned to her garden. She couldn't bend as quickly. She didn't stay long, but she trimmed one rose, and when she brought it to her nose, the scent felt like a song. Welcome back, Gloria. You see, your 80-year-old body hasn't betrayed you. It's just slowed down, like an old friend who no longer wants to rush, but asks you to listen to every step. Caring for yourself at this age isn't about bouncing back. It's about getting to know a new version of yourself. It's the art of slowing down without giving up, of feeling tired yet still trying, of knowing your limits but not stopping completely, of letting go but not letting go of everything. And if you, even just once, have found yourself more tired than expected, have been surprised that your body doesn't obey like it once did, have felt that you don't bounce back like in your 60s or 70s, you are not alone. Leave a number 2 in the comments, because I believe someone else out there once wore those gardening gloves, once bent down for a flower, and took 3 months to rise again. But today we are here, together, and still learning how to love these bodies in a new way. Number 3, the quiet growth of dependence. That day, there was a drizzle. The stone path in front of Mr. Eugene's house was more slippery than usual. He had just taken out the trash to the bin at the end of the street, something he did every morning. Umbrella in hand, walking carefully but still as confident as ever. And yet, with just one careless turn, he slipped. No one saw it happen. There was no blood, no broken bones, just a sharp pain in his backside and a tiny crack in his pride. He sat there for a few minutes, not because of the pain, but because he didn't know which emotion to deal with first. Surprise, frustration, and worst of all, embarrassment. Not because anyone saw, but because he saw something he had long tried to avoid. He couldn't do things the way he used to. He didn't tell anyone when he finally stood and limped back into the house. He didn't call his daughter. He didn't mention it to the doctor. He took a painkiller, applied some ice, and quietly changed a few habits. Took out the trash only on sunny days. I stopped going out shopping late in the afternoon. He also started saying no to the tasks that once made him feel proud. Eugene used to be the do-it-all-myself kind of man. He fixed the water pump on his own. He changed the ceiling lights himself. I raked the yard every weekend. He had lived through war and built a whole family from nothing. So, having to say, "I need help," to him felt like admitting defeat. But he didn't realize the price of hiding that need was quiet, growing isolation. Ever since the fall, he started avoiding the stairs. He wouldn't call a repairer, afraid someone might see his messy house. He didn't tell his daughter his meals had become irregular, afraid she'd worry and then interfere too much. Each week, his daughter, Laura, still came by. I brought some fruit and some milk and asked a few questions. And as always, he'd say, "I'm fine. I can still do everything," with a faint smile. But his hand was trembling behind his back. Then, one afternoon, Laura walked in and found him struggling to open a medicine bottle with a towel. Veins popping on his hand, face flushed red, eyes tightly shut from wrist pain. And when the bottle slipped and shattered on the floor, he sank into his chair. And for the first time, didn't say, "I'm fine." There was a long silence. Then he let out a breath, his voice softer than ever. "I think maybe I do need a little help." Laura didn't cry. She just nodded. And the next day, she brought him a bottle opener designed for seniors, a stair rail, and hired someone to do the yard once a week. Nothing big, just a few small things. But to Mr. Eugene, it felt like a liberation. You see, accepting help doesn't take away your independence. It protects it. Many people over 80 share the same fear, being seen as a burden, so they hide the pain, hide their weakness, even hide their simplest need to have someone nearby. Because for most of their lives, they've been taking care of others. Now to suddenly be the one needing care makes them feel small, like they've lost their worth, lost control. But in truth, the opposite is true. It's when you can say, "I need help," that you begin to take back absolute control. Because now you can choose who helps you. You choose what tasks you need support with. And you choose a way of living that's safer, more comfortable. Just like Mr. Eugene, after accepting help for the first time, he began adjusting to his life. He didn't rake leaves every week, but went outside to read. He didn't climb to change the lights, but learned to use bright lighting. And what he valued most, his daughter didn't interfere too much. She came over, shared a cup of tea, told a few stories from her week, and said goodbye with a long, warm hug. Accepting help doesn't break your pride. It's a new language of love in old age, and you deserve it. Not because you've gotten weaker, but because you've come far enough to know a hand reaching out is a gift, not pity. If you've ever stood on a stool but felt your hands shake, climbed the stairs but had to pause halfway, I reached for a can of milk but hesitated for a few seconds, and still said, "I can do it," then maybe it's time to say something different. Not, "I need help because I'm weak," but, "I need help so I can stay strong." And if that message touches you, if you've ever hesitated to ask your kids for a small favor, comment on the number 3. Because on the other side of the screen, someone else is staring at a bottle cap, hands trembling, wishing someone would help open it, and open their heart too. 4. When the world blurs your presence. That museum. Mrs. Irene had been there dozens of times, not as a tourist, but as a lecturer, a guide, a presenter, someone who once stood for hours in front of black and white photographs, sharing stories of war, of migration, of resistance, and of memories long forgotten by history books. This year she returned, not to take the podium, just as a silver-haired woman walking with her young granddaughter. Her hand still gently rested on the wooden railing, as if her body remembered where she used to stand and speak. A group of young people passed by. They paused in front of a well-known photograph. One girl pointed at it and asked her friend, "Do you know what happened here?" Mrs. Irene was standing right beside them. The answer, she knew it by heart, deeply and clearly, because she had lived through that time. She had interviewed the last surviving witness. She had written a historical paper archived in the local library, but no one turned to ask her. No one noticed the way her eyes lit up, then quietly dimmed. No one looked at her, as if she might know. At that moment, she felt herself slip out of the conversation, even though she was standing there. A quiet kind of invisibility. No one meant to make her feel that way, but no one stopped it from happening either. After 80, it's not that you lose your worth. It's not that you lose your voice. The world moves so fast that it no longer looks back at those strolling by the edge. You might sit at a family gathering at this age and feel every conversation rushes past you. You might be at a doctor's appointment and the doctor speaks to your child instead of you. You might walk into a restaurant and the server asks the person beside you, "What would she like?" even though you're looking right at them. The hurt doesn't come from being ignored. The hurt comes from knowing you still have so much to share, but no one asks. You still have stories, knowledge, and experience, but no audience. And over time, people begin to believe, I guess I don't have anything worth saying anymore. Invisibility doesn't come all at once. It comes in pieces. Each time you're interrupted, each time someone calls you that elderly lady instead of Mrs. Irene, each time your opinion is brushed off as old-fashioned, and slowly you fall quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've gotten used to not being heard. But Irene didn't accept that. After that visit to the museum, she went home and reopened an old notebook, the one she once used to write lesson plans and draw diagrams. Then she wrote a letter to the museum director. In the letter, she didn't ask for her old job back. She wrote, I'm still here, and if your museum ever needs someone to share first-hand stories of those years, I'd be happy to volunteer on Saturdays. 2 weeks later, she got a phone call. Not from the board, but from an intern. He said, I found your name in the library. I'd love to hear more about the migration back then. Would you be willing to share? And she did, once, then twice. Then a group of students began visiting her every Friday afternoon. They called her Teacher Irene, not because she was still in a classroom, but because they were learning something no textbook could teach. The value of lived experience. You don't need to shout to be seen. You need to show up with your eyes, your voice, your story. No one can take away what you've lived through. No one can erase your journey unless you go silent. So, if you've ever felt passed over, called the wrong name, left out of a family conversation, or asked for your opinion only for it to be ignored, you're not alone. Your presence is still here. You only need to reclaim it. Stand up, tell your story. Reach out when someone needs to listen. And remember, age does not dim you. Silence is what makes you fade. If this message touches you, if you've ever felt invisible, even while standing in plain sight, comment on the number 4, so others will know. They're not the only ones who felt themselves disappear in someone else's eyes. 5. A purpose. Undefined becomes regret. No more school bells ringing. No more hurried footsteps of students racing through the halls on Monday mornings. No more chalk-covered blackboards. No more eager eyes looking up, waiting to learn something new. Just Mr. Stanley, 88 years old, sitting alone in an old living room. The books are still there. His worn leather satchel still hangs in the closet corner. But it's been 3 years since he officially retired. And for the first time in over 4 decades, one question kept circling in his mind. Who am I now? For 40 years, Stanley was Mr. Stanley, the teacher the kids trusted, the one parents came to for school advice, the colleague others turned to for guidance. He had a schedule, a role, a reason to rise every morning. But since retirement, the alarm clock no longer rings. No one calls him for advice. No one urgently needs him anymore. At first, he thought, I'll enjoy this. Read more books, plant a few more rows in the garden, take slower walks. And he did those things. But after a few months, a strange feeling began to creep in. Emptiness. Not because he was bored, not because he was weak, but because he no longer knew if he was still needed. It felt like being in a crowded room, but no one turns to look at you. Like a pen that still writes perfectly, but no one writes anymore. Like someone who used to be so needed and now sits watching TV to pass the time. And that emptiness doesn't roar. It just quietly shows up every morning when you open your eyes and have nothing truly calling you out of bed. At 80 and beyond, it's not just the body that weakens. Purpose starts to drift away too. And if you don't take time to redefine who you are, you might fall into that invisible hole of being forgotten by yourself, One day, while flipping through old letters from former students, Mr. Stanley came across a note. "You once told me, we don't have to do big things, just do small things with all our heart." And those words awakened something. Maybe he still had something to give, just not in the same way as before. The next day, he handwrote a card to a new neighbor, a young woman who had just given birth to her first child. He wrote, "Congratulations on becoming a mom. The early days can feel overwhelming, but you'll do even better than expected." A few days later, she knocked on his door, baby in arms, eyes teary. "I never thought a little card could lift my heart so much," she said. From then on, he wrote more cards. To the mailman, to the teen who mowed the lawn, to the cashier at the store nearby. Just a few simple lines. But in every word, he began to feel something familiar return, meaning. Mr. Stanley realized the purpose isn't a title or a job. It's how you show up for others and yourself. He no longer stood in a classroom, but he could still teach. There was no podium, but he could still lift someone with a kind word. There was no chalkboard, but he could still share light through small, sincere human acts. Stanley began feeling new energy each morning with each cup of tea and a short walk. He no longer lived to be busy. He lived to be fully present. You see, many people don't fall apart the day they retire. They're still healthy, still cheerful, still active. But if they don't take time to redefine themselves, they begin to drift. No direction, no center, no sense of being seen, not by others, and eventually, not even by themselves. Regret doesn't come from what we didn't do. It comes from not knowing how to keep living with ourselves when all the old roles have ended. But the beautiful truth is, you can always choose again. Whether you're 60, 70, or 88 like Mr. Stanley, you can be the one who listens when someone's heart hurts. You can be the one who nods and offers quiet comfort. You can write a card, cook a meal, or share a story. Because purpose doesn't live in size, it lives in a meaningful presence. If you're living through days where you're unsure what they're for, if you've ever whispered, "Does anyone still need me?" Please don't hold that question alone. Comment on the number 5. And if you're ready, share with us what keeps you going each day. Even if it's just a morning cup of tea, a wave to the neighbor, or one gentle breath that still matters. Because you are still here, and you are still making quiet ripples in this life. The light remains. A reflection on life after 80. When I was a young doctor, I used to believe my job was to treat illness. But the older I got, the more I came to understand something deeper. What older adults truly need healing for is not just their bodies, but the quieter parts of the soul, the unnamed spaces, the unspoken emotions, the unshared pain no one asks about. Now at 77, after walking alongside more than 3,000 patients in their later years, I no longer ask, "Where does it hurt?" I ask, "When did you start feeling unseen?" Because living long doesn't mean living fully. We all know that. And if you've stayed with me through this journey so far, you're likely searching for something more profound. Too, a sense of meaning, a quiet invitation, an answer to that silent question. How do I keep going when most of the road is already behind me? That is the question many carry quietly after 80. And through this real life after 80 journey, I've learned that to understand healthy aging truly, we must look beyond blood pressure or test results. We must look at how we connect, how we show up, and how we respond to the changes life inevitably brings. Let me share something I didn't learn from a medical textbook, but from people like Walter, Gloria, Eugene, Irene, and Stanley. Being 80 is not the end of the story. It's the deepest chapter. The chapter where every gesture carries weight. Where every memory, no matter how small, becomes a legacy. Where your presence may no longer be loud, but it is more potent than ever. Remember Walter, the man who once had a whole circle of friends gathering at the cafe every morning, until one day that circle shrank until it was just him. Not because he changed, but because time slowly took away those around him. Yet he found the courage to step out of the silence and reconnect with bravery only age can bring. Then there's Gloria, who loved her little garden as much as she loved each breath. A slight fall took her 3 months to recover physically, and even longer to rebuild trust in her body. But she didn't give up. She learned to listen to her body with patience, respect, and small steps each day. Because she understood, living long isn't about waiting to recover. It's about learning to live alongside the new version of yourself. We also walked with Eugene, who kept quiet about his fall, not wanting to bother his daughter. He had been the helper all his life, so admitting he needed help felt almost impossible. But eventually he said just one sentence: "I think I could use a little help." And from that moment, he began to see. Accepting help doesn't make you weaker. It helps you stay stronger and longer. You remember Irene, don't you? A former historian who, on a return trip to the museum she once lectured at, was overlooked like a piece of decoration. No one asked. No one knew she had once stood proudly on that very stage. She didn't yell. She didn't demand anything. She wrote a letter and chose to show up again as a quiet but steady storyteller. She reminded us, you don't need to shout to be seen. You need to show up with honesty and presence. And finally, Stanley. Hundreds of students once admired the teacher, until the mornings came when no one called his name anymore. The emptiness crept in, bringing with it the aching question, who am I now? No more classrooms, yet he still taught through handwritten cards, kind words, and gestures that warmed the hearts of those he passed by. All these people, none of them were young, strong, or famous, but each of them chose to keep living with presence, with connection, with inner light. And you watch this video now, you're choosing that too. You're choosing not to fade quietly into the background. You're choosing not to let age define your value. You're choosing to redefine your life each day in your way. And if you want to practice healthy aging truly, don't just care for your body. Make sure you stay seen, heard, and felt by yourself and by those around you. Sometimes living long means saying goodbye to many people, to old abilities, to roles that once filled you with pride. But there is one thing no one can take away. You have the right to show up fully in your own life. You don't have to be a doctor, a teacher, or a somebody. You have to be someone whose eyes still carry warmth, whose heart still listens, and whose spirit hasn't given up hope. And if I, an aging doctor, could leave you with one final message, it would be this. Growing old is not a fading. It's the most concentrated, meaningful season of life. A time when everything becomes clearer, when every gesture becomes sacred, and when you, no one else, are the one who writes the closing lines with all the experience you've had. And now, before you leave this video, I have an invitation. Share one thing you've learned today and how you'll carry it into your life. It could be a lesson from Walter, a small action inspired by Gloria, a decision you'll make like Eugene, a voice you'll raise like Irene, or a reason to keep going as Stanley found. These are the 5 honest journeys, 5 brutal realities we've traveled through together today. And if just one of them awakened something in you, then this video has fulfilled its purpose. Please write it down, because you're not just helping yourself. You might be helping someone else somewhere. Read your words and realize, I'm not alone. And if this video made you feel seen, if you found a part of yourself in any of these stories, click subscribe, not to follow a channel, but to become part of this community. A community that believes in real life after 80 can still be a beautiful journey if we keep loving enough. We'll be right here, every week, with real stories, gentle lessons, and small beacons of light to help you keep going, with strength, no matter how fast the world moves. Thank you for your time, for your presence. And never forget, your light is still here, and still bright enough to illuminate someone else's life.